That smiley face said everything. She wanted me to know. She wanted me to feel it. I didn't reply. I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling, not in shock, not in pain, just in recognition. This wasn't a sudden betrayal. This was the final confirmation of a pattern I had been pretending not to see for years. They had already decided who mattered more. They just hadn't told me because they still wanted my effort, my time, my money, my emotional labor. I was useful. She was chosen. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was heartbroken, but because something inside me finally disconnected. I had spent years believing fairness would come eventually. That if I stayed patient, helpful, calm, they would see me. But the will showed me something brutal and honest. They already saw me. They just didn't choose me. The next week, I visited my parents again. Not to confront them. Not to argue. I just wanted to observe. My mom asked, "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" "I'm fine," I said. And for the first time, it was true. My dad talked about investments. My sister joked about buying a house someday. She said it casually, but her eyes flicked toward me, like she was testing something. I realized something then. They assumed I would stay. They assumed I would keep contributing. They assumed I would never walk away, no matter how invisible I felt. So I made a decision. I stopped talking about my plans. I stopped offering help. I stopped updating them about my life. I started moving things quietly, documents, savings, projects, contacts, into a world they weren't part of. Not out of revenge. Out of self-preservation. A month later, my dad asked me to co-sign a loan for something related to the house. I looked at him calmly and said, "I can't." He looked surprised. "Why not?" "I'm planning my future." Wisely, I said, repeating my sister's message back to her, word for word. She froze. They didn't understand what was happening yet. They thought I was just busy. Just distant. Just going through a phase. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't cutting them off loudly. I was detaching quietly. And that's what scared them the most later. Because one day, they would realize the son they assumed would always be there, financially, emotionally, structurally, had built a life where their will, their favoritism, and their approval no longer mattered at all. And by the time they noticed, I would already be gone, not physically, but permanently out of reach. And now they were feeling what absence actually means. Not the loud kind where someone storms out. The quiet kind where everything still exists, but the support system is gone. A week later, my sister called me again. Her tone was different this time. Not sharp. Not sarcastic. Tired. "I didn't realize how much you handled," she admitted. I didn't say anything right away. She continued, "Dad keeps asking me things I don't understand. Banks, documents, taxes, property stuff. I never had to think about this." "That was the point," I said calmly. She sighed. "So you're really not going to help anymore?" "I'm not going to be responsible for things I'm excluded from," I replied. "There's a difference." She was quiet for a long moment. For the first time, she wasn't talking to me as competition, or as a background helper. She was talking to me as someone who had stepped out of a role she didn't know how to fill. "I didn't think it mattered," she said quietly. "The will, I mean. I thought it was just paperwork." "It is," I said. "But paperwork shows priorities when words don't." She didn't argue. She couldn't. A few days later, my mom visited me. She sat on my couch, looking around like she was seeing my life for the first time. Not the version they assumed, but the real one. "You've built something nice here," she said softly. "I had time once I stopped managing everyone else's lives," I replied. She nodded slowly. "We didn't realize how much pressure we put on you." "You didn't put pressure," I said. You put responsibility without recognition. She swallowed. That sentence landed heavier than anger ever would have. We thought you were strong, she whispered. I said. But strong people still notice when they're taken for granted. Back home, things kept shifting. My sister struggled with tasks she had never cared to learn. My dad had to slow down and actually manage details he used to delegate. My mom realized how many invisible systems I had been running quietly for years. And none of it collapsed. It just became harder. Which was the point. One evening, my dad called again. His voice was calm, not commanding. If we changed the will, would that change anything? I thought about it for a moment. No, I said honestly. It wouldn't change what already happened. But it might change what happens next. He was quiet. I'm not angry, I added. I just don't want to be the default solution anymore. He understood that. Because this wasn't about inheritance. It was about identity. They had seen me as the dependable backup, not as an equal son. And now, for the first time, they were meeting me as someone who had chosen himself. Not dramatically. Not bitterly. Just clearly. And clarity, I learned, is the most uncomfortable mirror for people who never thought they had to look. They understood then, not from anger, but from absence. For years, I had been the quiet constant. The one who fixed things before they broke. The one who absorbed tension so others could stay comfortable. And because I never complained, they assumed I never noticed. But people don't notice the air until they struggle to breathe. My parents didn't suddenly become villains in my story. My sister didn't suddenly become a stranger. They were still my family. But the roles had shifted, and with them, the illusion that love and responsibility were the same thing. One evening, my dad said something that stayed with me. You were always there. We thought you'd always be there. I nodded. I was there. But being there doesn't mean being seen. He didn't argue. He just sat quietly, staring at the floor, finally realizing that reliability can be mistaken for obligation, and silence can be mistaken for consent. I didn't walk away from them. I just walked back to myself. And that changed everything. I still visit. I still care. I still help when I choose to. But I no longer disappear into the background to keep others comfortable. I no longer carry responsibilities that aren't mine. I no longer measure my worth by how much I tolerate. They didn't lose a child. They lost the version of me who lived for their approval. And in that loss, I finally found myself.